Hi, everybody. I'm Dave Holmes. I'm the Cleveland lead for the Foundation Center Midwest. And this is the beginning of the Train the Trainer video script for learning how to teach Introduction to Fundraising Planning. This is the first slide, and the first two slides are really about setting the stage. Usually, when I first begin the class, I ask everyone if they've ever created a fundraising plan. And generally, almost nobody raises their hands, or they do kind of a weak hand raise. So at this slide, I generally tell those in attendance that this is a fundraising planning class and what this class will or will not do. So it's not going to answer all of the fundraising questions. It's not going to explain certain types of fundraising like event planning or crowdfunding in detail. However, I always say that I will show a website, and that tends to be grantspace.org, where much more information on specific fundraising approaches can be found. Now, moving on to the beginning of the class, I make sure that I underline why it's vital to do a fundraising plan. I usually highlight the following on this class, on this particular slide. This is the definition of it, but I make sure I underline that it helps nonprofits generate diverse types of fundraising, something that most funders like to see. No funders like to think that they're the only source of funding for a nonprofit organization. It also gives strategies and tasks for staff to follow. It gives a focus and a time frame for all the activities that are planned for fundraising, plus it identifies who's responsible for those tasks. And then it's a living document. It enables nonprofits to see their return on investment for the time and money that they spend and to budget for the future. So this sets the stage and gets people ready for the different steps of the fundraising plan. In the class, we're going to break down each of these steps in detail, but I want to note that fundraising doesn't start with goals and a plan. There's a lot that goes behind it. The goals in the plan stem from a clear sense of what good that the nonprofit is doing in the community. And because of this responsiveness to the needs in the community, that's why it should receive funding in the first place. So, but before we get into these six, I make sure that the people in the class understand that we're not just talking about one source of funding. We're not just talking about foundations. And this particular slide, the first slide, shows, this is slide 5, by the way, shows that the private contributions make up really a small percentage of where nonprofits in the United States get their support. Most of the money going to nonprofits in the United States comes from fees from government contracts, and the majority come from fees for services and goods. So hospitals charging admissions, colleges charging for tuition, anybody charging for a particular service. That's going to be the way that fees come in and play. And most people don't want to think about that. They want to think about, oh, I'm going to write to foundations to get grants, and that's going to pay for everything. But it's a good time to introduce the idea that when we talk about fundraising planning, you have to think about earned income as well as any kind of gifts as sources of revenue. The other thing we show them here is a slide that shows private contributions by source and underlines that it's mainly individuals that are doing the giving. And this changes every year, but it's usually individuals about 3/4. Foundations give a lot, but they don't give everything. And foundations know that. So you can mention at this point that thinking of ways to garner individual support and do individual fundraising is going to be likely as important as the fundraising plan comes together as foundations or any other source that you're thinking. Now that wraps up the introductory part of the course. I hope it illustrated the importance of setting the context for the fundraising. Next, I'm going to speak to the basics of how fundraising works, assets and case statements.